Greetings all, this is Dominick from the Comic Book Report YouTube channel, giving another guest review for Organic Priced Books. Today we're going to be taking a look at Star Wars by Jason Aaron Omnibus from Marvel Comics. The issues in this volume were written by Jason Aaron and illustrated primarily by John Cassaday, Stuart Immonen, and others. The issues in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2015. The volume itself collects Star Wars issues 1 through 37, Star Wars Vader Down issue 1, Darth Vader issues 13 through 15, Star Wars The Screaming Citadel issue 1, Star Wars Dr. Aphra issues 7 and 8, and Star Wars Annual issues 1 through 3. This omnibus is an oversized hardcover coming in at 1,192 pages, and I'm happy to report we have a nice glossy paper stock. This fun Yoda cover I have here on my edition is one of the 2 direct market covers available for the Star Wars Jason Aaron Omnibus. Really quickly, I'll put up a picture of the other direct market cover. Another spectacular dust jacket design. Other than these 2 direct market covers, there is also, of course, the standard edition cover for this omnibus, which I'll throw up a picture of now, just so you can compare. All really great dust jacket options, no real complaints from me on that front. I also just love that the Star Wars logo is stylized throughout, especially on that spine. It looks really great on the bookshelf. And of course the art on the back cover as well, just spectacular. I definitely enjoyed the dust jacket design. Of course, the back cover also includes some reviews, a brief blurb, pricing information, and the contents of the book, which I already discussed earlier. A pretty standard looking dust jacket, but I really dig it. It really evokes some of my favorite things about Star Wars. I love that the back cover also has the main 3 here, with Han, Leia, and Luke. Just really fun. After giving you all one final look at this dust jacket, I did want to also showcase the under the dust jacket wraparound artwork on the actual hardback edition itself. I think that this is just spectacular. It's really evocative of the old school just posters that you'd see at the movie theaters for the Star Wars movies. Has that kind of painted, photorealistic kind of feel, and I really just loved it. The back cover even has Darth Vader. What's not to love? And the way the art on the actual book has that wraparound effect, it is really just stunning. I love to see what Marvel's been doing, especially with some of these modern omnibuses. I just love the extra art. And there it is, the full wraparound on the hardback. Just gorgeous. Absolutely love it. And now with all the exterior shots out of the way, I do want to transition to just show you a quick look at the binding you can expect from this omnibus. It is thankfully a sewn binding. There's a nice eye on this volume, at least as far as I can tell. That being said, there is a little bit of gutter loss, but I think that is pretty much expected, particularly in a book this size. But like I said, a good eye in the binding, nice sewn job, and overall, not too many things to complain about here. And without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the collection proper. Jumping into this Star Wars omnibus, I will say this is my first Star Wars omnibus I've ever read, and if the rest are anything close to this caliber, wow, I need to invest in more Star Wars comics, because this thing was a wild ride. From moment 1, seeing those end pages, seeing the Star Wars logo, and just seeing the floating text that just sort of gave context and exposition for these adventures, similar to what we'd see at the beginning of the Star Wars movies, I just felt immediately immersed in this world, and I felt right at home. I am admittedly a big fan of the movies and some of the television series, but I'm just beginning to dabble in Star Wars comics. I've read War of the Bounty Hunters and a couple things from the Darth Vader run by Charles Soule, but beyond that, this is one of my first Star Wars properties I've checked out in comic book form, but I, again, just really enjoyed it. So I do want to provide a bit more context for this run, this book, for those that, like myself, may not have known a ton before reading. This is the 2015 Star Wars series. This is all of Jason Aaron's run on the title. This is the Disney Star Wars era. They have Marvel, they have Star Wars now. So these comics, as far as I know, are considered canon. This isn't the older stuff, the Star Wars Legends, pre-Disney buyout. So this is considered consider the canonical Star Wars adventures, for those that matters to. As far as when these stories take place, in general, everything in this book happens between episodes 4 and 5 of the film franchise, so after the first movie, A New Hope, and before Empire Strikes Back. And I really enjoy that is the time period we are given to play with in all of these stories, and one of the things I liked about the original Star Wars trilogy is that it felt very episodic. From New Hope to Empire Strikes Back, a great deal of time had kind of taken place, similarly between the 5th movie and the 6th movie, and you just kind of have this feeling that, hey, this is the next adventure for these characters, for this crew. They're always getting into hijinks, being part of the rebellion. And this book kind of slots in, like I said, between episode 4 and 5, and you feel like you're just living out some of the other adventures that Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, and more just got into between these movies. And I think even when I knew that about this series, I was a bit hesitant, because even though I think that concept is super great and that time period is super ripe for further adventures, I think it was all going to come down to the execution for me, and that's ultimately what I came in to judge Jason Aaron's run with. How does this creative team stick the landing? Is it believable? Is this the world that George Lucas and team created in that original trilogy? Do they feel like the characters? Do they look like the characters? Do the motivations line up? Does this fit? Is this the missing puzzle piece that you can just slot right in between those films? And I think for the most part, at least from my perspective, that is a resounding yes. And the highest praise I can give a work like this. This absolutely feels faithful to the source material, and I felt like this was an expansion of the world and not some cheap copy. And I was really amazed to the degree that I felt that. I think the art we see from John Cassaday, Stuart Immonen, and more, the character models all felt like the actors and actresses we've seen from the film franchise, to a degree that it was almost uncanny. The comic Han Solo was Harrison Ford. Same with Princess Leia was Carrie Fisher. Luke Skywalker was Mark Hamill. The depictions are just extraordinary throughout this volume, and I think that really lent a lot of believability to this work, that it was a lot easier for me to engage and immerse because these were very much familiar faces to me, and I love that they chose to go for that close of an adaptation to the movies. It made it all the more easy to feel totally immersed. But the art alone would not have brought it home for me if not for the incredible storytelling by Jason Aaron. This is a man who clearly understands these characters. Throughout almost this entire 1,200-page volume, or almost 1,200-page volume, I felt like the character voices were absolutely true to the characters. I think the motivations and why they said these things were abundantly clear throughout, and they just sounded like themselves. And I think that is the highest praise, again, that I can give this work, is it felt like Star Wars. It felt like the original trilogy. It felt like these characters. Another novel thing about this series is that because it takes place after episode 4 before episode 5, in the beginning, Darth Vader doesn't even know who destroyed the Death Star. He just knows them as this pilot. And Vader trying to learn more about that pilot leads to a lot of intrigue and interesting story opportunities within this volume. Similarly, Luke, coming from the high of destroying the Death Star, you'd think he would feel almost unbeatable, but instead what we get is this man who's trying to struggle to find his place. He almost is justifying himself as lucky, and he feels so ill-equipped to be this Jedi Knight he feels he ought to be. There is so much opportunity for character development and dynamic conflict in this volume. I think in a lesser writer's hands, it would feel easy to be blocked in between the original trilogy movies, to feel like you couldn't really grow these characters, but I think Jason Aaron really rose to the challenge, and the amount of growth we can still see within these pages that could still, again, transition perfectly into Empire Strikes Back. Again, I was just awed at what they were able to achieve. Even the kind of flirtation between Princess Leia and Han Solo. We know that sparks begin to fly in Empire Strikes Back. We know that they were almost non-existent in New Hope, and this is a nice bridge where you see more of that flirtation, you see more of their relationship build and the kind of just back and forth. Again, it felt like I was reading the hidden chapters between these movies. In addition to the first 37 issues of this Star Wars run from 2015, we're also treated to a few issues of Dr. Aphra, Darth Vader, and a couple Star Wars standalones and annuals. Why I love this too is because it includes the full crossover storylines with some of those other Star Wars books to complete the entire story. It's really fun reading this because you can read it seamlessly from end to end and be treated to multiple story arcs across its almost 1,200 pages. And each story arc was so defined and specific that I didn't really feel like there was a ton of bleed through. You could kind of enjoy each storyline within this volume as its own standalone Star Wars adventure. And I loved that. And then the next storyline would sometimes have that floating text narrating the basic exposition at the beginning, like one of the movies. I feel like you could just keep enjoying each adventure. With a healthy amount of extras at the back, this was one spectacular omnibus. For a full review of this book, check out my channel, The Comic Book Report, in the coming weeks. And for all of your collected edition needs, please check out organicpricedbooks.com. Thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.